"Mom, can I put my drawing in the window?" Sophie's tiny voice carried across the elegant marble-floored lobby before Kate could even answer. "Sophie, stay close to me," Kate called, adjusting the strap of her worn brown bag. But Sophie was already darting through the polished hall, her little sneakers squeaking as she stopped to chat with the security guards, grinning as though she owned the place. The Parker Tower lobby was no ordinary space. It was the kind of place where every surface gleamed, where people wore $1,000 suits and $1,000 expressions. Kate, on the other hand, wore a Navy Cafe Tilda copyright uniform and an exhaustion she had learned to hide well. Then the click of expensive shoes echoed a rhythm everyone in the building seemed to recognize instantly. Daniel Parker, CEO of Parker Co., was moving quickly across the lobby, his phone pressed to his ear, his jaw tight with concentration. Everyone seemed to make space for him without a word, but when his pen slipped and rolled across the floor, he instinctively bent down to grab it. That's when he came face to face with Sophie. "Hi." Sophie greeted him with a wide, unguarded smile. Daniel returned a polite nod, ready to continue his color until his gaze dropped to the small silver pendant swinging from her neck. A circle with an engraving carved delicately into its surface. His breath caught. For a moment, the entire bustling lobby blurred around him. A memory of sunlight on ocean waves, the laughter of a young woman, the salty air, the sound of promises they never kept. He remembered sliding that exact pendant around her neck before they parted ways 15 years ago, thinking he'd see her again. He never did. And now a broken bar, a little girl was wearing it. Daniel crouched slightly, his voice quieter than he intended. Broken bar, where did you get that necklace?" Sophie blinked at him with innocent eyes. "Mommy gave it to me. She said it's important." "Mommy." Daniel's throat tightened, his mind raced, calculating possibilities, timelines, impossibilities. Without another word, Sophie skipped back toward the Cafe Tilda copyright on the left side of the lobby, the pendant swaying gently with every carefree step. Daniel straightened slowly, his hand tightening around the phone he had forgotten he was holding. He followed her with his eyes and spotted the glass doors leading to the Manhattan Brews Cafe Tilda copyright. Through them, he caught sight of a woman moving behind the counter, her brown hair pulled into a messy bun, navy blue uniform, sleeves rolled up as she worked quickly. He froze. It couldn't be. But when she turned, time folded in on itself. Kate. 15 years, and yet he'd know those eyes are nowhere the ones that used to light up when she laughed at his terrible jokes. Her face was more mature now, framed by faint lines of fatigue and strength, but it was her. Definitely her. "Mom, look!" Sophie shouted, pointing right at him from inside the Cafe Tilda copyright. "It's the pen man." Kate's brows furrowed, following her daughter's finger to where Daniel stood like a ghost from the past. "Sophie, get back here," she said, her voice firm. Then, with a glance at him, she added dryly, "And you, sir, if you want something, you'll have to come in and order like everyone else." Daniel hesitated, composing himself before pushing open the door. He tried to walk casually toward the counter, but inside, his chest felt like it was collapsing. "Good morning," he said softly, forcing a smile. "One Americano, please." "Size?" Kate asked without looking at him, focused on pulling shots of espresso for another order. "Large," he said, waiting for her to look up. "It's a beautiful morning, isn't it?" He tried, searching her face for recognition. Kate finally met his gaze. Her eyes were calm, distant, too polite. "Sir, it's 8:59 in the morning," she replied flatly. "I've got 15 orders in line and a daughter running loose. If you want to talk about the weather, I suggest calling the meteorology service." Some nearby customers chuckled quietly. Daniel swallowed his embarrassment, but before he could respond, Sophie came running over with a tray full of sugar packets, trying to help. In her rush, she bumped into his arm just as he was lifting his cup. The hot coffee splashed across his pristine white Italian shirt. Gasps erupted around the Cafe Tilda copyright. Sophie froze, her face paling. "Oh no, a broken bar, I'm sorry," she whispered. Daniel quickly shook his head, crouching slightly. Hey, It's okay. Accidents happen. Kate walked over, expecting her to scold Sophia, but instead, she handed Danielle a clean black apron with a tiny smirk. "Here," she said. "It'll look better than that shirt all messed up. Besides, now you have a legitimate excuse for being late to your meeting." Danielle blinked at her. "How did you know I have a meeting?" She arched an eyebrow. "Because every man in a suit rushing in here at 9 a.m. has one." More laughter from the customers. Something inside him shifted, an odd mixture of amusement, nostalgia, and aching curiosity. Over the next few days, Daniel found himself stopping by the Cafe Tilde Copyright every morning around 10 a.m. He told himself it was coincidence, but his assistant Marcus would have called it something else entirely. On Monday, Sophie was debating with an elderly customer about why cats were better than dogs. On Tuesday, she was teaching a businesswoman how to fold paper airplanes from napkins. On Wednesday, she had convinced 2 security guards to compete in a drawing contest. Kate rolled her eyes every time Daniel showed up, but Sophie adored him. "You again," Kate muttered when he approached the counter on the third morning. "Let me guess. Large Americano." "Actually," he said, smiling, "I'll try a cappuccino today." Kate started preparing it without comment, though her eyes flickered briefly towards Sophie, who was rhythmically tapping a spoon against a sugar jar to make music. Customers clapped when she ended the little tune with a bow. "She's a broken bar creative," Daniel said, watching her with an unreadable expression. "That's a polite way to put it," Kate replied, a trace of pride softening her voice. Then, for the first time in days, Kate stopped, looked at him directly, and asked, "Can I ask you something? Why does a man like you keep coming down here? You've got a whole city of coffee shops." Daniel hesitated, caught off guard by her bluntness. "A man like me?" he repeated. "You know," she said, sliding his cappuccino across the counter. "Rich, important, probably has an assistant who fetches coffee for him." He smiled faintly, taking out his wallet. "Maybe I just like the atmosphere." "Authentic," he added when she raised an eyebrow. Kate gave a soft, almost disbelieving laugh. "Authentic. That's a new one." Before Daniel could respond, Sophie appeared at his side, tugging his sleeve. "Can I tell you a secret?" she whispered, but loud enough for half the Cafe Tilde Copyright to hear. "Sophie," Kate warned, sensing danger. "Mom thinks you're handsome," Sophie announced proudly, but she told Aunt Jenny that men in suits are trouble. The entire Cafe Tilde Copyright went silent. Kate closed her eyes, praying for the floor to swallow her whole. "Sophie Rodriguez," she said slowly, "one more word and you're grounded from drawing for a week." "But it's true," Sophie insisted. "You said he has interesting eyes." Daniel bit back a laugh, coughing into his fist. "Interesting eyes, huh?" Kate's cheeks flushed pink as she shoved Sophie gently toward her corner table. "Please ignore my daughter. She's training to be a professional gossip." Daniel smiled, pretending not to notice the color in her cheeks. That night, though, he couldn't stop thinking about one thing: the pendant, Sophie's age, and the memories of a summer he thought he'd left behind. And the more he thought about it, the more he needed answers. On the 47th floor of Parker Tower, Daniel sat in his office, staring at the city skyline. The quarterly presentation files were open in front of him, but he hadn't turned a single page. His thoughts kept circling back to one thing: the pendant. The little silver circle he had once clasped around Kate's neck, the way Sophie had said, "Mummy gave it to me," and the calculations that wouldn't stop spinning in his head. He pressed the intercom button. "Marcus." Seconds later, his assistant appeared, tablet in hand. "I need you to discreetly look into someone," Daniel said, his voice low, steady, and deliberate. Marcus raised an eyebrow but didn't ask questions. After 5 years working for Daniel, he knew better than to pry. "Her name's Kate," Daniel said, hesitating briefly. "She works at the Cafe Tilde Copyright downstairs. Brown hair, has a young daughter, Sophie. I want to know everything. Where she lives, how long she's been here, her family situation. Quietly. Understood, Marcus said. When do you need it? Yesterday, Daniel replied. Marcus nodded and left without another word. Daniel leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. He didn't want to believe it or not yet. But deep inside, his gut told him the truth he wasn't ready to face. Sophie might be his daughter. Downstairs in the cafe copyright, Kate was fighting a different battle. Rodriguez, her supervisor, Margaret, barked from the back. My office. Now. Kate sighed, telling Jenny, her coworker, to keep an eye on Sophie while she stepped inside. Margaret was already standing behind her desk, arms crossed, her sharp features making her look like she'd bitten into a lemon. How many times have I told you this is not a daycare? Margaret snapped. That little girl of yours has been distracting customers, spilling coffee. It was an accident, Kate cut in, keeping her tone calm but firm. And the customer didn't complain. Doesn't matter, Margaret shot back. This is a professional environment. Either you find a solution, or our broken bar. She let the unfinished sentence hang in the air. Kate clenched her fists discreetly. The last thing she needed was to lose this job, not when rent was already a constant worry, not when Sophie depended on her for everything. I understand, she said finally, keeping her voice even. When Kate walked back into the cafe copyright, she caught snippets of sympathy from a few regulars who had overheard the exchange. Don't let her get to you, said an older man sipping cappuccino. She treats everyone like that. Kate smiled faintly but didn't reply. Her pride was fragile enough already. Sophie, meanwhile, was sitting cross-legged at a corner table, drawing on scrap paper with a security guard's pen. She waved excitedly when Kate passed by, showing off a picture of 3 people holding hands, 2 adults, 1 child. Kate's heart ached. Sophie always drew families of 3. Always. 2 hours later, Marcus returned to Daniel's office with a folder. I've got the basics, he said, setting it on the desk. Daniel scanned quickly. Kate Rodriguez, 32 years old. Single. Lives in Queens. Has worked at the cafe copyright for 8 months. Works a second job at a laundromat 3 blocks away. 1 child, Sophie Rodriguez, age 6. And the father? Daniel asked carefully. Marcus hesitated. No record. From what I gathered, she's been raising Sophie alone since birth. Daniel leaned back in his chair, exhaling sharply. His hand gripped the pendant resting in his memory. 6 years. Sophie was 6. His mind couldn't let it go. Sir, Marcus said slowly, forgive me asking, Butte Broken Bar, this isn't like you. Digging into employees' personal lives? Daniel stared out the floor-to-ceiling windows, eyes fixed on the cafe copyright below, where Kate wiped down tables and Sophie twirled around, her laughter carrying faintly through the glass. It's complicated, he said simply. But it wasn't complicated. It was terrifyingly simple. Over the next few days, Daniel's morning visits became routine. At first, he told himself it was coincidence. By the 4th day, even Kate noticed. You know, she said one morning, handing him his Americano, you're starting to look suspicious. Should I have security frisk you for smuggling sugar packets? Daniel smirked. Wouldn't dream of it. Kate narrowed her eyes slightly. Then why do you keep coming down here? Is this your version of authentic? He hesitated, wanting to say everything that he might have a daughter, that the summer they shared had never left him, that the pendant on Sophie's neck was burning a hole in his thoughts. But before he could answer, Sophie ran over and tugged at his sleeve. "Guess what?" she said, grinning. "I won the drawing contest with the security guards." Daniel crouched, studying her picture of three stick figures holding hands. His chest tightened. "Beautiful work," he said softly. "You've got talent." Kate smiled faintly from behind the counter, watching the exchange, but something guarded lingered in her eyes. Later that week, Daniel invited Kate upstairs under the pretense of delivering coffee to his office. When she arrived, the breathtaking view of Manhattan nearly stole her breath. "This place here, a broken bar," she whispered. "Wow." Daniel smiled slightly, guiding her inside. But then her gaze landed on something she hadn't expected: a framed photograph on his desk. A younger Daniel, standing on a sunlit beach. His arm wrapped around a girl with long brown hair, wearing a blue blouse she remembered perfectly. Her. Kate froze, the tray trembling slightly in her hands. Before she could ask anything, the door burst open. "Daniel," a sharp voice said, "you need to sign thesis." A tall, elegant blonde woman stepped inside, dressed in a designer suit. She stopped when she saw Kate, her blue eyes narrowing. "Kate Rodriguez," she said smoothly, her lips curling into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Kate blinked. "Do broken bar we know each other?" "Oh, we do," the woman replied. "Veronica Hayes. You lived on Maple Street, right? 2 houses down from my cousin Lucia." Kate's stomach dropped. Memories of that cramped childhood house came rushing back: the arguments, the sacrifices, the endless counting of pennies. "Yes," Kate said cautiously. "That was a long time ago." "Some things don't change," Veronica said, her voice dripping with sugar-coated venom. "It's funny, isn't it? A girl from Maple Street, a broken bar, now conveniently delivering coffee to the CEO." Kate stiffened, reading between every poisonous word. "Veronica," Daniel cut in sharply, sensing her tone. But Veronica wasn't finished. Single mother. Struggling to make ends meet. Yet somehow, she manages to find her way back into the orbit of powerful men. Interesting, isn't it? The silence that followed was suffocating. Kate clenched her jaw, fighting the urge to respond, then set the tray down and turned toward the door. "My job's done," she said quietly. "I should get back to work." "Kate, waiter," Daniel started, but she was already gone. In the lobby, she took a shaky breath, holding back tears she didn't want anyone to see. She didn't know what Daniel was playing at, or why he kept showing up, why he suddenly wanted coffee delivered, why Veronica acted like she knew something Kate didn't. But deep down, beneath the confusion, one thought terrified her more than all the rest. What if Sophie's pendant wasn't just a coincidence?